Welcome back to my channel. I used to do gardening videos all the time, and now I'm going to be changing it up a little bit, and I'm going to be talking about books. My other favorite hobby is reading. We now live in an apartment, so it's kind of harder to garden. I do have some grow bags on the patio, but not enough for gardening videos that I would love to do. So I'm going to jump into my other hobby, which is reading. And I have read 3 books here in August. I read Hampton Heights, The Troop, and The Woman in the Garden. At the beginning of August, I read Hampton Heights. Hampton Heights is about 6 paper boys and their manager, Kevin. Their manager, Kevin, promises the 6 paper boys who get the most sales out in Hampton Heights, he promises them Burger King dinner. But little do these 6 boys know that Hampton Heights has a horror, werewolves, witches, just all these scary elements to it. Each chapter is about 2 different boys. Well, the first chapter is about Kevin and how he meets this woman at a bar while he's waiting for the boys to do their job. Kevin goes back to the lady's house, and you know what happens when you go from a bar to someone's house, and he just it gets a little crazy because her sister is in the back room and she's making all these weird noises, and Kevin ends up going to the bathroom after they do a little bit, and he's just something's wrong. And then the sister comes out and looks all crazy and disformed with other people's skin and stuff. And then it goes on next to, let me see. It's been a hot second since I read this one. I read it at the beginning of August. So we have Kevin. And then the next chapter is about Simon and Joel. And basically these boys are going through the neighborhood trying to get people to, buy newspapers, and they discover that Simon's grandpa lives in this neighborhood and is a werewolf, and that Simon is also a werewolf, and he meets this pact. Anyways, it goes from there. And then our next chapter is about, let's see who. The next chapter is about Ryan and Mark, and they are also on another block in the neighborhood, and they are trying to sell these papers, and people are saying to them, and they finally come upon this house that has statues in front of them of young kids and stuff, and they walk up, and it's these 2 elderly ladies who let them in, give them tea, and they start talking to them about their love story. And these boys are portrayed as growing up within a year of being with these 2 ladies. They go to bed, they wake up, the story continues going on, but these ladies are witches, and they're just telling them their love story. But when they leave, they finally get out of their house and leave, it's still the same day. So that happens as well. And then our next chapter is about Al and Nishu. And anyways, they come upon these trolls while they're in the neighborhood. Well, first, while they're in the neighborhood, everybody is telling them yes to buying newspapers. And they're yes, we're going to win this Burger King dinner. And then they all of a sudden come upon these trolls, and, well, actually not trolls, a troll. And the troll takes them down into the sewer, and they go through this wild ride, and the troll brings out their darkest secrets, and it just goes on, and these boys have to figure their way on how to get out of the sewer and how to get their stuff back and their secrets and their memories. Finally, they do end up getting out, and everybody meets back at the van that they originally came in, and Simon drives the van to Burger King, and they just order everything they can. And Kevin finally Kevin makes his way to where the van was, cannot find the boys, cannot find the van. He calls up his ex-girlfriend, and he's like, I need your help. and she drives him to the Burger King where he finds all the boys, and that's about it. Honestly, I give this book, I want to say 3 stars. It could be 2. It was not my favorite book. It was very rushed, very quick. I felt like there could have been more to it to make it better, but it was very rushed, very fast. It was like a 3 star, possibly be 2 star, maybe 2.5. But it may be your cup of tea. It could be, it could not be. Either way, Hampton Heights. So it did take me about a week to finish up Hampton Heights. Maybe a little bit longer because I honestly, halfway through, I did want to DNF it. I did it because I was like, no, I really do want to finish it. So I did finish it. Took me a little longer because I wasn't that into it. But by, I don't know, the 2nd week of August, I picked up The Troop. And this one scared me. I would read it right before bed, which I probably shouldn't have done. It is about a group of Boy Scout troops who go onto an island with their scoutmaster. And the first day that they are on this island, but someone comes on the island who is deathly sick, deathly hungry, just wants to eat everything. And the scoutmaster is like trying to help this guy because the scoutmaster is also a doctor and trying to help him to see what's wrong, to see why he's sick all the time or why he is sick. And long story short, the person that came to the island while the boys were on the island had a worm that was made by scientists inside of him. They were trying to create like a diet pill, but it was a worm in a diet pill. Anyways, these boys, the scoutmaster ends up dying because he gets infected. All these boys are all by themselves. The guy that's hungry has now like died because the doctor tried to do surgery on him, or the scoutmaster tried to do surgery on him, and it simply did not work because they're in the middle of nowhere on a desert island doing Boy Scout things. Anywho, there are about, I would think it was about 5 boys. There are about 5 boys, and it tells their story for like each one, but each one gets infected at different times, and it just brings out the worst in all of them. And at the end, there is one boy who was able to make it out of the island. And I mean, they had this island secured with military and everything, and these boys had no clue. They thought people were going to save them, and they did not get saved. They had to save themselves. But there is like, they have to kill animals. They like wrestle with the turtle. They wrestle with one another. It's very gruesome, very yucky. If you can push through all that, The Troop is actually a really good book, but it can get gruesome very quickly, and it is kind of disturbing. I did have to put the book down a few times because it was very, very disturbing. So look into it before you read it. But only one of the boys was able to make it off of the island, and after he made it off of the island, they like put him in a seclusion where they did like testing and make sure he wasn't infected. And at the end, because I don't want to run it for you, but the end was not my favorite. I think they could have left that last chapter out, if I am being honest. I really wish they did leave the last chapter out. Was not a big fan of it, but I would rate this book a 4 out of 5 stars. I did enjoy it very much. When I would read it, it didn't matter if I read it before bed or if I read it during the day. I was dreaming about this big pesticide worm, and it just took over my thoughts. At one point I thought I was infested because it was that good at describing details on this parasite. It was gross. You should definitely check out The Troop if you like disturbing stuff. After The Troop, I started The Woman in the Garden, and it was good. It started out slow, but it was very good. It is about Professor Rose, and she has a poisonous garden. And in her poisonous garden, she has a telescope. And in that telescope, she is looking at her neighbors across the street through her telescope, and she sees this woman who she becomes fascinated with. Like, she is like falling in love with this woman who she's never met. But there's 3 random men that are always in this lady's apartment, and she's always wondering why. She writes it down in a notebook. And one day Professor Rose decides not to do her normal routine, and she ends up going for a walk. Well, while she's on this walk, she sees her neighbor from across the street being chased by one of the guys. So she secretly follows her to see where she's going, to see if he's gonna hurt her. They go on trains and subways and buses, and they end up across town, and she just discovers so many things about this lady that she has no clue, who she really is. And then the next day, she's like, Professor Rose again is walking outside, not doing her hobby, out of her routine, and she walks by this coffee shop and notices that there's some house plants that could be poisonous. And she goes in and she notices that her neighbor works there. And while she does work there, she tells her, and they get to know each other. And her neighbor's like, oh my God, there's this beautiful garden on the rooftop across the street, and I would love to, look at it. And to find out that it's actually Professor Rose's, and Professor Rose is like, oh, that's probably mine. You can come up and see it one day, even though she didn't mean it. So the next day, or I don't know if it was the next day or a couple days, but Professor Rose is outside again, and she sees her neighbor, and her neighbor's like, oh, I would like to take you up on your offer and to see your garden. Professor Rose is like, what are you talking about? I never said that. And she was like, yes, you did. But anyways, so that happens. Professor Rose takes her neighbor up into her garden. She makes her put on overalls, put her hair up. She sits her down. She can't touch nothing. And she starts explaining all these poisonous plants to her. Well, she starts explaining a certain one, and her neighbor's demeanor just changes. She doesn't want to be there no more. Something's wrong. And she kind of just gets out of there real quick. As the neighbor's leaving, Professor Rose walks down with her and watches the neighbor get kidnapped. Okay? Get kidnapped. Professor Rose calls the police and tells them that my neighbor's been kidnapped. I watched, she got pushed into a van. Anyways, now this long investigation goes on. One of the people that Professor Rose knows has been killed by some of the plants that were in her garden. Her garden was also destroyed after the lady left, after her neighbor left. And so they're blaming the professor that she's the one that did it. Long story short, it wasn't Professor Rose. It was a group of people, but it was good because the whole time you're like, which person out of this whole group of people did it? And you just have to read it because it does take a good twist. Did start out slow, but by chapter, it started off slow, and I gave it till about chapter 10, where I was like, if it doesn't pick up by chapter 10, I'm putting it down. But it ended up picking up by chapter 4, and I was like, I am hooked. But yes, must read. I give this a 4 out of 5. So if you like a good mystery, a good little thriller, The Woman in the Garden is definitely what you need to read. The last week of August, I picked up Her Soul for Revenge. I changed from mystery and thriller to dark romance. I am now on chapter 18. I finished the first book in January and loved it. This one, oh my God. Oh my God. Juniper, such a strong, independent woman who wants revenge. And Zane, just chef's kiss of a man. Definitely, I can't wait to finish this up. There's about 50 something chapters in here. I'm on chapter 18. But this is what I will be finishing up here soon in September. Anywho, those are the books that I read in the month of August. They were good. Except for the first one. The first one was, like I said, a 2 to 3 star book. But the other 2 were 4-star books. And if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and a thumbs up and subscribe. Again, this channel is going to be changing. It is no longer going to be gardening. It is going to be about books. And I hope y'all enjoy, because I enjoy reading books and I enjoy talking about them. So, see you later. Bye.